Welcome to the Go Out Living Attitude, a cancer survivor's journey through health and wellness, helping others search for the tools to bring us a healthier and happier lifestyle. Hey everyone, Jonathan Brandt, Go Out Living. Today's guest is Eric Headlee. He is an author of a Rose Elite Longevity Guidebook. He is the founder of Health Next. He is a holistic coach, expert in longevity, let's say. And I'm excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I'm
I
excited to
was
be
looking through your bio, and it really stuck out to me. I mean, it's been a journey for you to get here, hasn't it?
It has very
Why don't
much.
we get into that? I mean, because you've done so many different things, but you've really, I think the longevity thing is what really stuck out to me and how you've gotten there. And so why don't you start with a little bit with your story and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So sort of the way I started in 1987, my senior year in high school. During 2 days, I had a catastrophic knee injury. I was, hoping to play college football and do sorts of things in sports, but I had a torn ACL, torn MCL, upper and lower meniscus, and I was 17 years old. Lots of active stem cells and those kinds of things. So after surgery, I recovered quite well. I think I spent 9 hours on the surgical table and about 9 months in a cast. I graduated in that cast and watched my football team lose our first state championship ever, which I would have been on that field had I not had that injury. But as of today, I regret having ever touched a football in my entire life because the next, you know, 50 years were filled with pain and suffering and all kinds of stuff. And again, the surgery was great. I was fine for many years. They told me not to take up any lateral sports, so I took up tennis. Yeah, I became the
I
captain
get
of
it.
the men's team. I started skiing and doing. We loved to do things outside. I was head of our Cub Scout troop, and about 40 or so, the osteoarthritis really set in, and I did virtually every intervention that you can do for osteoarthritis, and knee injections and physical therapy and all of that good stuff. But eventually, I got bone on bone. I had to stop playing tennis. I had to stop skiing. I had to stop doing all kinds of things. One of the worst days of my life was when I had to tell my son when he was about 11 years old that I couldn't take him to Philmont for Cub Scouts. He wanted to go do that 7-day hike, and my body wouldn't do it. And so, I sort of spiraled into depression and turned to alcohol to soothe myself, and that turned into massive weight gain. I ended up my last, I think the highest I've got charted is 273 pounds. I'm 170 pounds right now, which is 5 pounds lighter than my high school wrestling weight. And then we'll talk about how that happened. The next thing that really happened was I had a seizure in Italy. So I had an alcohol withdrawal seizure in Italy. We had traveled 24 hours and just like drank wine and stuff the entire time. And I got there and I woke up in bed sort of trembling, and I reached for a glass of water and my body just locked in place. And the next thing I remember is waking up in the hospital. But in between that, the weirdest thing is that I remember the ceiling sliding by in front of me as they carried me down the stairs, because the gurney it was too big to fit in these little, European elevators. And so these two little Italian guys are carrying me down the stairs, really climbing and getting a tip. At 273 pounds, by the way.
Oh,
So I was probably pretty heavy in conjunction with that gurney, but I woke up in the hospital. I think I was out for about 24 hours. We were there for a conference for my wife, and so we stayed. But we thought, they'd done a bunch of testing on me and things of that nature, and the conclusion was alcohol withdrawal syndrome. But I stayed in the hospital for 2 days. Then I got out. We stayed in Italy. I sort of limped around and was like a feeble 95-year-old, male at roughly 50 years of age. So that was sort of a coming to Jesus moment, right? You go, oh well, wow, how did that happen to me? I didn't see that coming, even though I should have. There are plenty of red flags along the way. But the alcohol sort of gets you to go, nah, that's not me. That's other people, right? So after that seizure, I quit drinking. Obviously, I came back to the States. I had plenty of testing done here, and the one thing that they found was F3, F4 liver fibrosis. And that's, F4 is basically as high as you can go. It's cirrhosis, it's end stage liver disease. They told me that it was, irreversible, that, I'd be able to manage it, but that I would have to live with it for the rest of my life. And, I spent 30 years in engineering, and as an engineer, you're trained to say, okay, here's a problem, but that problem probably stems from something else. And so I was trained to go and look, but I'd spent over 30 years in medicine. So I had a pretty good understanding. I'd sat through thousands of surgeries, thousands of grand rounds. I had a medical school education to some degree, because of having dealt with it for my entire life. Um, and so I sat in the car after that, and just thought, I don't accept that. I don't accept that prognosis until I prove it out myself. And so I went and I started doing some research. I'd had stem cells done on my knee, so that sort of an advanced procedure done on my knee, so I could get to being mobile again, which actually worked for me. I've seen plenty of people that it actually didn't work for, and I think there may be some reasons behind that, but we can get into that if we have time. But it worked for me, so I was able to exercise and do those types of things. And so I thought, in conjunction with that and getting healthier and eating healthier, there's got to be other ways. And so I actually did what's they call an n equals one experiment. So I decided to go ahead and experiment on myself. And in reading the literature, and I already knew a lot about stem cells. In reading the literature, retatrutide, which is yet to be FDA approved, has several factors, but one of those factors is it actually diminishes liver fat. And so if you can get rid of the liver fat, then you can start to address the fibrosis. Well, exosomes, retatrutide to some degree as well, but exosomes really can come in and rebuild that tissue and block the hepatic transport paths that are causing you to get that fibrosis in the first place. So I combine those two therapies, and today I'm at an F0, F1. And that's been it took 2 years. Now, if you really look at the research, they say that quitting alcohol alone, your liver, obviously, you probably know the liver is an amazing organ; it can heal itself. But quitting alcohol alone will give you some degree of fibrosis being reduction. But all of the studies showed that the fibrosis reduction, they could get up to about a 60%. So they could go down by about 2. If you're an F3, you can get maybe down to an F1. If you're an F4, you can maybe get down to, depending on how low you are on the F4 scale, get down to an F2. But it typically said it took 9.5 years. And so I did it in 2.
That's
And
crazy.
I would love to see, and part of my presentation in Boston is about this, is that I would love to see these companies get together and say, okay, let's actually, stem cells need better research anyway, because I think that they do some amazing things. And combining those two, there's never been a study done like that except for me, and I'm one person. So that's not proof, right? There's no proof in that other than the proof that I have from the 2 liver fibrosis scans 2 years apart that show the reduction. And it flies in the face of all of the studies that have been done that show 9.5 years. So I'd love to get these guys to go, okay, maybe this has something to do, because they're not only are exosomes good for fibrosis of the liver, they're good for fibrosis of the heart and other things. Like Dr. Neil Reardon, who's the sort of grandfather of stem cells down in Panama, has been doing it for 40 years. In his book, he actually talks about reversing congestive heart failure, actually increasing ejection fraction by reducing the fibrosis on the heart. So I think that there's some real tangible benefits from putting those two things together, in my opinion. But we'll never know until somebody actually puts it through a double-blind study and finds out for sure.
Why are they not doing it then?
I don't know. The only thing I can think with stem cells in general is that you can't patent them. So if you can't patent them, then I'm not going to name any companies, but the drug companies can't go off and make them. So it's kind of like the MDMA study. Have you heard of the MAP study?
Yeah.
So they killed MAPS, even though it had like almost a 90% success rate in the treatment of PTSD. And the only thing that you can think of is that they killed it because the pharmaceutical companies want to, sort of reverse engineer that so that they can patent it, so that they can make money off of it. Which,
It's all a money thing.
yeah, yeah, sure.
I mean, you see that with holistics in general, don't you?
I do. Yeah. And that's not, I'm not going to bash the pharmaceutical industry.
No.
They've saved many lives, right? But they've also, it's, I'm going to treat you with this drug, and then when this drug's side effects come up, we'll treat you with another one to treat those side effects, and it's, you know, it's a roller coaster.
I'm living proof of that right now. um, I guess my thing is we tend, like you said, we ignore a lot of stuff, especially us men, until I hate to say it's too late because it's not necessarily too late. It's just going to be a harder path. When should people be looking at longevity? Should we be looking more of when we're teenagers, when we're, you know, early 20s? I mean, where does it actually start? Is it start from, okay, we have kids right now that I got a 6-year-old, does it start there?
To some degree, I do believe it does, because you can look at a you look at genes like the MTHFR gene, which I don't know if you've heard of that or not, but it's I don't want to cuss on your show, but you can put together MTHFR and what they call it. um, and it's a big longevity thing, right? So it's a lot of longevity people talk about. If you talk about that with a traditional doctor, they'll roll their eyes at you. I actually have living proof of that. They rolled their eyes at me whenever I had my son at a vascular malformation clinic, and I asked for a homocysteine test, and the guy was like, "Oh, you're longevity, bro." No, I have a fast COMT. That means my homocysteine is elevated. Elevated homocysteine affects the endothelial lining of your blood vessels. He has a vascular malformation. You know what a vascular malformation is? A bunch of blood vessels. So I want to make sure genetically I didn't pass it down to him, and if we did, it's an easy treatment. It's vitamin B. It's the correct form of vitamin B. Right. So if you just have MTHFR, it might be methylfolate. But if you have what I have, which is no MTHFR but COMT, it's hydrocobalamin, not methylfolate, methylcobalamin, but hydrocobalamin, because it goes into your system a lot slower. And so that my body can actually bring the homocysteine down. But homocysteine also affects the blood-brain barrier. So in very young kids, if they have that, you're going to see things like ADHD and behaviors that I have a friend that took his kids off of. He was having wildly bad behaviors from his children, and he took them off of a traditional diet, and got rid of all of the folate, infused stuff, and put them on more like a Mediterranean style diet without any of that in it. And 2 weeks later, you got different human beings. And so it affects the brain, and then put that effect on the brain for 20 or 30 or 40 years, instead of addressing it early enough that, and, maybe you don't address it at 6, but maybe you address nutrition at 6. Maybe you actually go out and get genetic and test, and those types of tests done later when they're 12 or 13 or 14. And again, like MTHFRs, there's a lot of people out there in the longevity field that make a big deal out of it. It's not a big deal. It's really, really easily treatable. Just traditional medicine doesn't test for it.
Well, that's the key right there is they're not testing for it. I talk a lot about how I've gone through I don't know how many blood tests because of my cancer stuff, and not once did they really give me anything out of that. It took me to do an at-home test to find out something that would actually help me lose weight again, and that's after working out 3-4 hours a day. I couldn't stop gaining. It took me to go somewhere else to get the actual somebody to pay attention. But that's our problem. And if we want to start with our kids though, how do we get them on the right tests eventually? And how you say, yeah, nutrition, definitely have to. But how do we start reaching out to these at-home tests?
Yeah, I mean, the MTHFR COMT test is just a cheek swab. So you can't. Well, the one the company I represent is just a cheek swab. And there probably are others, but that's the easiest one, especially for a kid. And you only have to do it one time, right? So if it's genetic, it's going to be in your genes for the rest of your life. You're not going to change that. So you only have to do it once. And then going forward, it's just like genetic tests for the pharmacogenetic tests for drugs, and the genetic tests that they use in oncology. If you had some of those and had the possibility of early detection, even if you got cancer, when you go in, you have this data set that they can already work with, so it speeds up the treatment plan.
Yeah, it should.
It should.
I mean, that's part of the problem going through all the treatment. plenty of side effects between me and my wife, and there wasn't, well, like you said, they'd throw another pill at it, and then you
Mm.
have side effects from that.
Yeah.
And it I hate to say they ignore it. It's not like they're ignoring, they just don't know how to treat it with anything outside of pharmaceuticals. Well, that's their protocol. They have to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah, I mean, that's the problem, right? Is that the drug companies and the insurance companies, if you're a doctor these days, you're beholden to whatever they tell you to do. Otherwise, you could lose your license. And I don't know a single doctor. I've got multiple doctors in my family. I don't know a single doctor that went into this going, "Oh, I just want the money." Most of them went in and said, "I want to help people."
Mhm.
And
Well, yeah, and like you said, we've both been in that. I was a surge tech, I was a CNA, I was a medical helicopter pilot, I'm whatever, but you find out pretty quickly that's not everything.
yeah,
There's the holistic side of it. So let's look at the holistic side of it, and you mentioned root causes as well. How do we determine that we need to move to a more holistic way of thinking? When things aren't going right through regular means as far as your doctors, is that when okay, let's take another look at it from a different standpoint?
absolutely. Yeah, and I think that we go back and what I found in going through my therapy, and I went through a therapy called EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing is what it's called. Really bad. Notice I had to read that. My wife will shoot me because I forget that sometimes. But anyway, she's an EMDR therapist. So, but yeah. So anyway, yes, I think that it's very important to go back and look at root causes of trauma first and foremost. So I think everybody needs therapy. I grew up, I'm 57 years old, so I grew up in that mindset, probably like you, where men don't cry, men don't get therapy. Where, you get up and walk it off, and that's just not true. It's it should be absolutely phased out of any conversation, and I think that it probably will be because I think the younger generation. My son's 23. He's been in therapy most of his life. Now his mom was a therapist, so he put him in therapy early on. I'm as a guy that grew up in the 80s and stuff. I resisted going to therapy, but once I went and figured out that I had this trauma from when I was 5 years old that sort of stuck with me for over 40 years before I had went and resolved it. And had I resolved it 20 years earlier, 30 years earlier, what would things have looked like? Would Italy have happened? Maybe not.
Well, and then you go back to, I brought up, that's when, when I was born was 75. In between 75 and we can even say 85, in 10 years right there, we went from, home cooked meals to now we're throwing stuff in the oven, TV dinners to microwavable to, well, Domino's delivers now. We went full board, just probably every wrong way because it was easy and fast. And now we're paying the price.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that the food that we eat, it's so high in sodium and whenever you eat out, you don't control any of the ingredients that are going in, so you don't really know what you're putting in your body. And I think we ate out the last 3 days in a row, and I'm telling my wife that's got to stop. We need to cook in for and I love to cook, so I have no problem doing that. So I enjoy it, but like after 3 days of eating out, I feel kind of not great.
Yeah, you don't have energy anymore. I mean, that's how I feel. It's just like, oh Lord, I gotta get up and do what today?
Right. It's funny, if you know comedy, you know who Bill Burr is? Yeah, so Bill Burr has a skit where he talks about going, he wakes up in the morning, he's ready to go, right? And he said, "I stop at McDonald's and grab a McDonald's sandwich, and then I went back home and laid on my couch and was like, never mind, this day's wasted."
It's so true though. I wish
There's a
people
lot
would
more pressure than
recognize it.
that.
Yeah, I wish people would recognize it though. I think they're so used to it, they don't know any different. I see that with my kids. I cook all the time. I can't get them to not go, do the fast food thing. I can't do it. The older ones anyway. My younger ones going, "Dad, there's too much sugar in this." But the rest of them is like, we're so used to it. So how do
Yeah,
we I don't know how we change it. I mean, obviously we do this and we keep telling everybody, you got to change because you'll end up like us. That's easier said than done, isn't it?
For sure. I mean, I know in my 20s, I was playing in a band. I was abusing my body. And I'm sure that, there's, from a longevity perspective, there's probably damage there that is irreversible. And so, could I have lived longer? Maybe, but our goal really is, the average person lives for about 12 to 16 years of the last part of their life in some form of chronic disease or chronic pain, and that's statistically not just in the US, but around the world. And our mission is to find people that we can help compress that down to a lot shorter period of time. And we know, you and I both know that father time or mother nature, whatever you want to call, is unbeaten. We're probably not going to beat them either. So we're probably all going to end up in the same spot. But if we can give people back 10 of those 12 to 16 years, as a higher quality of life, that's what we want to do.
Well, yeah, and to me, life is being able to go out with my 6-year-old and do things.
Yeah.
It's not really what kind of life if you can't?
Yes.
And yeah, it's hard. It's a hard road to get back. And like you said, you might not ever get it completely back, but you can get to a point where you can enjoy stuff with your kids or family and all that. You just got to do it.
For sure. Yeah.
I'm working on go ahead.
I was gonna say, and you have to believe that you're worthy of being able to do it, which takes you back to that idea of mental health and ensuring that people who don't think that they are worthy of healing won't.
I'm gonna I was gonna go there. Mental health. You're right. So how again, it's easy to say how do you get people to do this? But I mean, mental health has been ignored since I can remember. I mean, like you said, we didn't grow up with it.
Right.
Is it changing a little bit?
I believe it's changing quite a bit. Yeah, I think that in particular, I think COVID. One of the worst things you can do is isolate people. And we were so isolated for what, a year or 2 years that I think that the mental health really exploded. And then you have all these companies that are coming online. They're doing it through text and through online, and I just don't believe in that as much. I think that if you can't afford mental health, that's a good avenue because it gives you some kind of an outlet or somebody to talk to. um, but whenever you pay a therapist $25 an hour, they're not going to stick around very long. And that they have master's degrees at minimum, and they've got bills to pay, and that's just not a living salary. So I think some of those models don't work as well because you don't get people that are super well trained that can address some of the things that some other people really really need. And that might not work out through talk therapy, and especially through text therapy. But I think that had I not addressed the 5-year old and figured that out, I would have fallen right back into the exact same patterns that I had been in before. So no matter what I did on the other side, again, no matter what the patient does right, if you're not, if you don't have establish a baseline and bring that baseline up on a steady basis, you're going to fall back.
I agree 100%. Yeah. I fight it every day. I enjoy where I'm at right now, but it's not easy. I mean, I used to drink a lot too, especially when I was going through treatment. It was my way out. And yeah, I fight that every day, especially if we go out to eat or something like that. Yeah, I wouldn't mind it. It's hard. Here's the part that gets me too. There's so many of us out there that want help or want to understand that others are in that same situation. Like I started the community on school. My hope is that people just start coming together and talking about it and being honest with themselves, that we can all just say, hey, yeah, we're all alike. We all need a lot of help. And yeah, okay, you can't afford therapy, but come on to a free membership where everybody is in the same boat. And let's just talk about it. Let's watch a video like yours and talk about what we learned. That's what I'm trying to do from my side because, yeah, I'm not a therapist, but it's just about acknowledging our own issues and then getting it out there. And it feels a lot better once you do.
It's interesting. I love music. We go to South. I live in Austin, Texas, so we go to South by every year. We go to ACL every year, et cetera, et cetera. South by is more bands that not a lot of people know, and we always find 4 or 5 bands that we love and follow. But I just you made me think of this. And so there's these, I learned of this guy, Youngblood, and he led me, I started watching these videos, these reaction videos, and they led me to this guy, Ren, who's incredible. If you haven't seen him, probably, it might make you cry, but watch Ren, High Ren. It's a beautiful song. It's a performance piece. It could be done on Broadway. It's pretty amazing. But my point is that these led me down this path of finding all these new artists. Why couldn't we start reaction channels for mental health and for those types of things? Maybe that's a good idea. I actually just joined a men's group, and these are the kinds of things that we talk about. And there's only 4 or 5 people involved in it right now, but we're sort of putting out, me and the guy who founded it are sort of putting it out on different platforms, and trying to find other people that would benefit from being involved in that kind of thing, and just watching other men of our age be vulnerable and talk about you know things like being diagnosed with a traumatic issue 50 years ago, that happened 50 years ago. And some people think that being yelled at as a 5-year-old is not a big thing, but whenever you're told you're bad as a 5-year-old, and it's multiple adults yelling at you, it sometimes it sticks, and it did for me.
No, I agree. Well, and you brought up, well, for me, it was no pain, no gain. So it was sports. It didn't matter. We'll tape it up, and as long as it's not completely broken, you're going kind of thing. But yeah, you're exactly right. And you feel powerful after you get it out. You feel like you've taken your life back. And it's not a blame thing. It's just, again, acknowledging it. My big thing right now with what I'm trying to do is it's self-improvement, and self-improvement from every direction. And yeah, I use health and nutrition to really be that self-improvement, but that includes mental health, holistics. I mean, the whole 9 yards. You have to have all of it to improve yourself, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, agreed.
That leads me into, okay, a little bit more on the holistic side. We are always told we got to take these prescriptions, and we know a lot of them have side effects. We can watch it on TV as they're telling us, take this, and then there's the whole list of what it can do outside of what it's supposed to do. Um, how do you talk about supplementation?
So I talk about supplementation in conjunction with blood work and biomarkers. I have a stack that I call sort of a non-negotiable, which is really a stack of supplements that address the 12 hallmarks of aging, and so they're not really targeted at at issues that you might have within your blood biomarkers. They're targeted at those autophagy and those things that help people age slower or even kind of reverse aging. And then I talk about, from there, we're going to talk about, let's do blood work, let's do genetic testing, and let's figure out from that what you need, and then let's do that. Once we do the genetic testing, you don't have to do it again, right? It's one time, and you're done. Your genes aren't going to change, but gene expression does have some impact on drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, as well as supplements that you take, in terms of inhibiting their effectiveness. And so you want to make sure that you're taking the right forms of those supplements and the right forms of those drugs. I've got a client right now in my business, in my practice, that she just came in, handed me a pharmacogenetic test and all of her blood work. I ran it, scanned it, and interpreted it, and came to find out that she's on 4 or 5 drugs that her body can metabolize at about 30%. So, you want to go back and look at, let's figure out first and foremost what's going to be most effective in your body, because if you're taking something that's only 30% effective in your body, then you have what we call expensive pee. So you're peeing
Exactly.
most. Yeah, so we want to make sure that first and foremost, we know that whatever we put you on is going to be effective at the the target that we're wanting to go after, and then only then do we sort of optimize what that looks like.
For those that aren't close to you, where do they go to get this done?
Yeah, so I mean, I can be reached online. I'm not a licensed practitioner, so I don't have a license in every state. I can operate as a coach in any state in the country, so they can do that through me. There's so many people out there that are doing this nowadays, that there's probably somebody in their town doing it. and they may just need to go on social media and try to find who that is.
What are your thoughts on functional medicine?
I think functional medicine is a good thing. It's interesting that functional medicine is a lot closer to holistic medicine, but obviously most functional medicine practitioners are licensed, so they can hand out prescriptions as well. And I work with a medical practitioner, a licensed doctor as well. That whenever I get to a point where I say, okay, obviously we need to go to a pharmacological intervention. And we try to do that as early as possible and get them involved, and then he and I can have a dual approach to that client. But I think that functional medicine sort of, if it's practiced correctly, bridges the gap between traditional medicine and holistic medicine.
I love that. Yeah, you said that exactly what I was thinking. I like that. And that, okay, brings up the next thing I saw on here that was interesting, metabolic optimization. A lot of people don't even understand what that even means as far as
Yeah,
metabolism. I mean, when they think of metabolism, it's simply, okay, that's just but that's not what you're talking about in here.
yeah, correct. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the metabolizing different forms of drugs and supplements. What your body does with what you put in it. And so the easiest one is to go back to the longevity gene, the MTHFR gene, because MTHFR raises homocysteine. If you're not methylating properly, you're not putting in the right B vitamins to keep it at bay, your homocysteine rises. If your homocysteine rises, then you start getting the effects of that. It can cause, in medical school, the primary thing that they teach about homocysteine is it contributes to heart disease. And it's because it messes your vascularity up. And it's so easy to address. You just find out what gene variant you have, and if it's high, then you treat it based on that gene variant, on what B vitamin you take, and that's pretty much it. So there's not a pharmaceutical intervention that's involved in that process, and so it's not measured by anybody that is in the Western medical system. And again, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier or before this, but I was in a meeting with my son. He's got a vascular malformation, and I asked. They told him, we want you to do this drug test before we start working on trying to figure out what your malformation is all about and how we go about fixing it, or mitigating it in whatever manner or fashion. And I just asked him, hey, can you add homocysteine to that test? And the doctor literally rolled his eyes at me and looked at me, and he was like, longevity? So basically called me a longevity bro. And I was like, no, I have a fast COMT. I have a genetic variant that causes my homocysteine to be raised if I don't do the proper B vitamins. I just want to make sure genetically I didn't pass it to him, and if I did, we address it. And so why are you rolling your eyes at me?
Well, yeah, and guess what? They're going to make money on the test. I mean,
They're going to make money on this anyway. Yeah, yeah, and that test too. Yeah. And I
uh,
mean, when he sort of rolled his eyes, I just told him, well, I can do it myself. I can just do blood work myself. So
again, we're not trying to bash that,
no,
the medicine side of it, Western medicine, whatever you want to call it. There has to be a bridge, though, like you said, and the functional medicine, the holistics. We're having to get. Hopefully, everybody can recognize how much we need each other, or we need all those to work together, because that's truly when you want patient care, you need all of those,
for sure.
especially if you're going through something bad.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the issue, is really kind of, to me, it's we intervene too late. It's just we're really good at fixing people that just were in a car crash or got shot by a bullet, or we are probably top notch in the world at that. At the other, we're below some countries that you can't get running water in. So it's a mix. But the interesting thing is, and I just saw this not too long ago, so I don't know a lot about it, but the 2030 mandate from CMS is really to move more towards value-based care, which is, instead of being paid fee for service, now these doctors have to have outcomes, that positive outcomes with these patients. But again, that patient's not going to go there until they're sick.
No, and my dad says it all the time. Well, I went for my yearly checkup. I'm sorry, it means nothing usually. I mean, it
Yeah.
really doesn't. again, we go, okay, health insurance. They're the ones that said, go get my yearly checkup. They're not working together. They're not, again, they're out to make money. We have to understand that in reality. So you got to go out and do it yourself. Look for a holistic functional medicine. There's so many different people out there that can, honestly, they'll sit down with you for more than 10 minutes
Yeah.
and talk,
And
because
if
that's where it is too.
you want just a regular physician, go look for a DPC, it's called direct, DPC, direct primary services or something like that. Yeah, they're doctors that only take cash. But they'll sit with you for, they actually look at, they're not beholden to insurance companies. They're not beholden to that because that's not who's paying them. So they don't have to follow the traditional, standard of care to a T, and so Pro can put a cast on it. Well, maybe, we've got a different approach to that. But so those guys can also be helpful, I think.
Well, and they can be helpful when you're going through stuff as well. If you're going through, again, chemo, like me or my wife, heart disease, whatever you're going through, they can help along the way, because you're going to have side effects. I guarantee you're going to have side effects.
For sure.
And they can help you get through that as well. Don't wait like me. I ended up having to get surgery and all that because of the side effects, and I waited too long. And now I don't know if I'll ever heal correctly. I have a functional medicine doctor going, we need to talk, thinking I'm doing everything right. I'm like, oh Lord.
Yeah.
One last question. For those out there that haven't started that journey that I like to call, the health journey, the healthy lifestyle journey, whatever you want to call it, or they're about to start, what are the steps? What can they do? How do they get started?
Well, the first one is obviously to have a meaningful conversation with somebody who practices, this type of medicine, and just find the right person, because that's the biggest thing. The next thing is really, to me, if you're struggling mentally in any way, shape, or form, find help for that. There's a comedian named Josh Johnson that really struck a chord with me, young guy. And he has this segment, and I won't get it right. I should play you the video, because he gets it right. Anyway, he says, if you would just see yourself through the eyes of the people who love you, how beautiful a place would the world be? And I think that, that struck a chord with me, because my struggle was always that I wasn't good enough, and that came from being yelled at as a 5-year-old. And I just want people to know that, yeah, you are. You'll find that there's people that love you, and they love you for a reason. So get the help you need so that you can love yourself.
So true. Well, and there's, again, a lot of us out here that are
Yeah.
more than willing to be there.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, like you said, there's other websites, or there's groups everywhere, folks. You don't have to do ours, but it's that first step of, acknowledging you need the help, but understanding that it's out there.
Yes.
Look for it. It's definitely out there. All right, Eric Headlee, I know you're busy. I really appreciate it, though. Author of, what's that?
I appreciate you having me on.
Of course, author of a Rose Elite Longevity Guidebook. I'll also list everything on the post that will go along with the podcast episode. I really do appreciate it. And all the viewers out there, they'll appreciate it too. That's all I got for today, folks. Again, thank you, Eric. I really appreciate it.
Very welcome. And maybe a month from now or so, I've got another book coming out called The Mind Metabolism Loop. And that, keep an eye out for that. That one actually goes through a lot of this trauma related reasons why people don't get better.
That's great. We'll get that on there too. Honestly, everybody needs to know it. All right, Eric, thank you so much. Thank you to all of you. I really appreciate every one of you. And as you know, find the attitude, keep the attitude, go out living. Bye, everyone.